Today's show is going to be a little bit different because I recorded the interview in front of a live audience at the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering in Elko, Nevada. I'd like to thank the Western Folklife Center, who puts on the National Gathering, for making the live taping of Cowboy Crossroads possible. And I'd like to thank Butch Haas, who was running sound for the show and recorded this interview. You can find out more about the Western Folklife Center at westernfolklife.org. And if you've never attended the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering, you should start making plans now to attend the 35th gathering the last week of January in 2019. I'll be playing a few concerts out on the road this spring, and I would love to meet you and your friends at one of my shows. On April 30th, I'll be playing a house concert in Albuquerque, New Mexico. On May 2nd, I'll be playing at a Western Folklife Center event on the 18th floor of the Zions Bank Building in Salt Lake City, Utah. On May 3rd, I'll be playing a house concert in Salt Lake City, Utah. On May 4th, I'll be playing at the Western Folklife Center in Elko, Nevada. And on May 5th, I'll be playing at the Mountain Music Parlor in Reno, Nevada. And finally, on May 11th, I'll be playing at Flynn's Cabaret and Steakhouse in Felton, California. You can find out more information about any of these shows by visiting my website, andyhedges.com. I've got a couple of dates that are still pending, and if you would like to host a house concert, or if you know of a good listening room I should play, give me a holler. Send an email to andy@andyhedges.com. I'd like to start today's show with a poem written by my friend and the wonderful poet from Alpine, Texas, Joel Nelson. This poem is entitled The Final Run of the Deadwood Stage. The stage from Dodge to Deadwood had rolled in right on cue, 'cause Bob, the driver, had a knack for bringing stages through. With jaw clamped tight, hat pulled low, the old coach rocking steady, Bob kept his schedule right on time, 'cause Bob was rough and ready. In spite of snow or sleet or fog in that wild and hostile land, not to mention hold-ups by some sinister outlaw band. Now, Bob was not considered old, as stagecoach drivers go, but at handling lines on an 8-horse hitch, he knew all there was to know. A woman ran the stagecoach stop while her husband herded stock. Through the window she'd seen Bob's dust as he rounded the wagon rock, and Bob would want his meat and beans there steaming in his plate, 'cause Deadwood is 6 hours more and the stage is never late. So the old girl, stepping lively, setting dishes on the table, while driver Bob's unhitching, leading horses to the stable. Now there's a certain way of walking that's unique to stagecoach men, and it's in this style and manner driver Bob comes shuffling in, which prompts the exclamation, "You've outgrown another pair. I'm gonna have to work 2 jobs just to buy you boots to wear." "Did you see Shep pull my wagon, Mom?" asked Bob, the 5-year-old. "I did indeed. Now wash your hands. Your dinner's getting cold." Well, the stage from Dodge to Deadwood has made its final run, and Shep, the collie, Bob's 8-horse hitch, is sleeping in the sun. And Bob is off to Nottingham for an afternoon or more of stealing only from the rich and giving to the poor. Tomorrow he'll be Lancelot, a Canadian Royal Mountie, or sailing on the highest seas in mutiny on the Bounty. He's charging with the Light Brigade, he's swinging on a vine, he's Crockett at the Alamo, and safe in bed by 9. Well, keep on dreaming, driver Bob. Your dreams just might come true. The stage from Dodge to Deadwood has rolled in, right on cue. Howdy folks, this is Andy Hedges, and you're listening to Cowboy Crossroads. On each episode, I interview a different guest and ask them to share stories and discuss music, poetry, and culture from the working cowboy west and beyond. My guests today are Riders in the Sky. Riders in the Sky are a cowboy band specializing in the great Western harmony music of the 1930s and 40s and their own brand of wacky cowboy humor. They're currently on tour celebrating 40 years together as a band, and along the way they've performed over 7,000 concerts, become members of the Grand Ole Opry, and won 2 Grammy Awards. I'm proud to say that this is appearance number 7,216 for Riders in the Sky, right here on Cowboy Crossroads. The interview you're about to listen to was recorded live on stage at the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering in Elko, Nevada. Here's Riders in the Sky.
Well, hey there.
Hey guys.
How you doing?
Hey, Andy.
Thanks for being here.
Well, we're so glad to be here.
Would y'all like to kick things off with a song for us?
We would.
All right.
1, 2, 3.
I wanna drink my Java from an old tin can while the moon goes riding high. I wanna hear the sound of the whippoorwill. I wanna hear the coyotes cry. I wanna feel my saddle horse between my legs, riding him out on the range, just to kick him in the side, make him show his step and pride, back on those Texas plains. Now sometimes it feels I'm back in my dreams, way back where I belong.
I'm just an old cowhand from the Rio Grande, back where I was born.
Oh, these city ways and these city lights are driving me insane. I wanna be alone, I wanna be back home, back on those Texas plains. Mighty flying in a great big western howdy, it's Riders in the Sky, America's favorite cowboys, bringing you the best in western music live and direct from Cowboy Crossroads. So don't touch that dial, saddle pals, it wouldn't be the cowboy way. I wanna drink my Java from an old tin while the moon goes riding high. I wanna hear the sound of the whippoorwill. I wanna hear the coyotes cry. I wanna feel my saddle horse between my legs, riding him out on the range, just to kick a little aside, he can show his step and pride, back on those Texas plains, back on those Texas plains. Yeah! Oh! Yeah! Get up here, get up here.
Oh, that's just great, guys.
Yes, yes it is.
Really, really pleased to have you on the podcast. I would like to talk today about what each of you were doing before you were part of Riders in the Sky. Thought we might start with you over there, Doug.
Well,
I'm curious, how does a guy who grew up in Michigan in the 1950s and 60s end up playing in a cowboy band? Where did you first discover this music?
I first discovered it 2 different ways, and one was that the Grand Ole Opry was the great radio show that covered the Southeast. But if you were up north, it was the National Barn Dance out of Chicago. And my uncles, my grandfather and grandmother were Finnish immigrants. They settled up way up in northern Michigan, and the National Barn Dance was the show they heard. And Gene Autry was on the barn dance, and Rex Allen was on the barn dance, Bob Baker, a lot of the singing cowboys, Arky, the Arkansas woodchopper. And my uncles both learned to play guitar, and bless his heart, my Uncle Hank gave me that guitar that they first played. It's a 1937 Montgomery Ward. I'll say this, it plays in tune. My Uncle Arvid, there's a good Finnish name for you. My Uncle Arvid could yodel. And so at family gatherings, I heard that. And then the other way was when we lived in California for a couple of years when I was in grade school. I went out to Knott's Berry Farm, and they had a group there called the Rainsmen, or not the Rainsmen, the Wagon Masters. And one of the guys later was in the Rainsmen. That's why I made that mistake, Dick Goodman. But I heard the live harmony singing and cowboys singing around a campfire, and that just knocked my socks off. And then on the radio, we didn't even have TV, of course, when I was really, really young. And I remember especially Cool Water, heard the Sons of the Pioneers, and I could just see it, It just was so visual and poetic. And as I grew up, I've always written poetry and written songs and such. And I think that was one of the great inspirations, that particular song. It's still so vivid to me laying on the floor in front of the radio. And that's about it.
Yeah, I know along the way you played music with Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys, had a short stint there.
A couple short stints.
Any stories from those Bill Monroe days?
Oh, gosh, I had a friend in high school who was all eat up with bluegrass, so he played the banjo, so he made me play the guitar with him because I was the only guitar player that he knew. And so I was into that for quite a while in college and got the chance between my junior and senior year to do a short tour, 6 weeks with Bill Monroe. And I was as scared as hell 21-year-old kid, So the only stories I have are feeling petrified on stage. And then after I graduated from the University of Michigan, on graduation day, I loaded up a little Volkswagen and drove to Nashville. That was 50 years ago this spring. And that's all I wanted to do was get into music and play music. And I got a chance to play bass for about 6 months with Bill again in the summer of '69.
And so you wound up in Nashville, and the band, the Riders, that started in Nashville during those days, I believe.
1977, there's a whole community. Every community has one, I think. It's sort of an underground acoustic music guys who play fiddles and guitars and banjos and such and don't play electric. And I got to know Woody through that grapevine. We played several little things together, and I got to know Too Slim. This is a funny story. He went to the University of Michigan as well, and we were both there at the same time. And we both lived on Thompson Street, and we both played music in bands, and we never met till he moved to Nashville and moved in next door. So he sees me out there playing catch with my daughter. I'm wearing this Detroit Tigers cap. He says, are you a Tigers fan? Oh, yeah, I'm a Tigers fan. Well, me too, and I play the bass. And so we just got together, and I'd been doing a solo cowboy thing, but since I love the Sons of the Pioneers and Foy Willing and the Riders of the Purple Sage and Andy Parker and the Plainsmen, just all those harmony groups, I always wanted to put together a group that sang harmony, and just Slim and Woody and I just really clicked, and we were a trio for 10 years and achieved some sort of recognition nationally. And then we were driving down the road and we saw a guy with a sign that says, "We'll squeeze for food." And so we picked up this young kid, and he's only been with us 30 years. Joey the Cowpoke King.
Well, Joey, that might be a nice segue. I'm curious. I know you've got an interesting background, and I heard from Hal Cannon we were visiting a few days ago. He mentioned you had some great stories of coming to Elko in your early days, back when you played with the Frankie Yankovic.
That's right.
Yeah, great polka band.
Yeah, polka music back then, the way Frank played it, was not what you might expect. It's not what you see on TV on Molly B's or Big Joe or any of those things. It was a very, very wonderful band made up of great musicians, much more like a Dixieland band. No drums, 2 accordions. Frank would play the lead. I would play the fill. He would be playing more or less the trumpet part. I'd be doing the clarinet part, all of fills and everything. And then we had an upright bass, a piano, and a banjo. So it was very pleasing. Back in those days, we would draw, anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 people. In Milwaukee, we drew 8,000 people at a dance hall. It was called the Eagles in Milwaukee. It was huge. Times were much different. We played the Stockman Hotel. First time I played in Nevada that year, we played Vegas, Tahoe, Reno, and Elko. We played the Stockmans. That is 54 years ago when I
How
played
old
the
were you
Stockmans.
then, Joey?
I was just about 15 years old. Yeah. Played Vegas and played Reno. A couple of the hotels we played in Reno are no longer there either. I have outlasted the hotels, which is pretty amazing. But the main thing I want to tell you folks is before I joined the Riders in the Sky 30 years ago, I actually had a career as a musician, see?
Yeah.
But that's all over now. No, it's been 30 years of absolute fun on the stage and playing with guys whose music you enjoy. Every day on stage is magical. A lot of people, and I'm one of them, have said that out of the 24 hours, sometimes the 22 hours off stage are not really great, the traveling, being away from your family and stuff, but the 2 hours on stage are still as magical as they were when I started out on the road 55 years ago. And I did play with Frank Yankovic. I grew up in Chicago, and Chicago was a great place to grow up. And I'll tell you why. During the week, I could listen to WLS rock and roll. On Friday night, there was live jazz from Mr. Kelly's. On Saturday night, on WLS again, there was the barn dance. And so I heard rock and roll, jazz, cowboy music, or country music, but a lot of cowboy. For example, the barn dance is where Gene Autry got his start. He became very, very famous on the barn dance playing there. And then on Sundays, all the ethnic music, all the Slovenian music, I'm Slovenian, and Croatian music and Greek music and everything. So it was a good place for me to absorb all this music. And I took it all in. And I started taking music lessons almost 65 years ago. You think I'd be better, right? Yeah. So I did, and it's been a wonderful career. Meeting up with the Riders was great. When I moved to Nashville back in 1988, 87 actually, I said I'd never be on the road again. I'd been on the road for 25 years already and shaking hands with different players all the time. And it was something I just didn't care for anymore, really. And so I became a recording studio musician, recorded with people like U2 and Paul McCartney and Garth Brooks and Shania Twain and Dolly Parton and Johnny Cash and people like that. And I loved it until I got a call one time from Woody Paul. And Woody Paul said, "Would you like to come and make a record with us? You're an accordion player, you do sessions." I said, "Sure." He said, "Okay, we're going to record on such and such a date." Actually, the date was, I know this from Don Cusick in our book, said it was March the 7th, 1988. He said, "So bring your instrument and all your sound effects." And I went, "Sound effects? What are you talking about?" But of course, if you know Woody, that's something he might say, even to this day. So I did come, and that led to me being a guest on their radio show. It was called Riders Radio Theater, which is still a podcast now. You can listen to all our shows that we did way back then. And it became fun. It was fun again because the four of us, Too Slim and Ranger Doug and Woody and I, got to play music. It wasn't playing things that were on the radio. It wasn't playing, when you're in some bands, you have to play the same song the same way every time because that's how it was recorded. We could do the same song different 350 times, before ever going back to the original way. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm still here and love it, and love these guys. Too Slim and Ranger Doug and Woody Paul are the brothers maybe that I never wanted, but I'm so glad I got them. And let's not forget Mark Abbott, who's doing such a great job for Too Slim this weekend.
Yeah.
So, Woody, I'd love to hear from you, and I know you've got an interesting background yourself. How does a guy who's
There you go.
into plasma physics end up playing fiddle in a cowboy band?
Not enough room in this brain anymore for stuff like that. Hunger will drive a man to do desperate things. That's part of it. But I was raised on a farm in Tennessee. Like Doug was listening to WLS, I was listening to the Grand Ole Opry and all the stuff that they played during my early childhood from 6 a.m. until 8, I guess, when we would go to bed, and they had every kind of music every day, from the classical to the pop to the dinner hour but on Friday and Saturday night, it was a well-kept secret among the people at WSM for many years. That's where they made a lot of money, because there was a big life insurance company in Nashville called the National Life and Accident Insurance Company. And back in those days, they had those big 50,000 watt
Transmitters?
Yeah, transmitters, big radio towers, which doesn't exist anymore, I don't think, except at certain times. But I would listen to that. The radio was going all the time, and didn't have a TV until I got to be 9 or 10. But on Friday and Saturday night, they would have the live Grand Ole Opry starting in 1925, and they kind of didn't want the FCC to know about it when they went to Washington to make the change, because the people in town, the business people, they didn't like going to church the next day and seeing all the soda cans and popcorn and stuff. It was low-class music. The country music was, the old-time hillbilly music, but it was a real moneymaker. And anyway, my dad kind of played the banjo a little bit, and he taught in a one-room school until I was about 4 or 5, and he went out in his own pocketbook and bought band instruments for the kids, and he would play the banjo, and he got fired for playing the banjo. The school system didn't really like to have the music in the public schools, and they didn't like the banjo particularly, and I think he liked to play the banjo. He loved the kids, but he liked to play the banjo more. And he had a fiddle left over from those days that he bought from Sears and Roebuck's for $1.50 or something. And it just lay around in the closet for years. And I got to be 10 or 11, and I figured I got to figure out something to do for the rest of my life. And so I picked up the fiddle and started playing the fiddle. Got for Christmas one year, I got a set of bow hair, and I got a little instruction book and some rosin, and I went out and made a tailpiece out of an aluminum pan that we fed the dogs out of. I took the tin snips and cut it out, and that rim right there, I bored 4 holes and put the fiddle together when I was 11 years old. And I didn't have any lessons, and that really shows. But I listened to the radio, and I liked the fiddle. And I grew up then, listening to the radio and country music in the barn, milking cows until I was 16 or 17. And then we moved to Nashville and rented the farm, and I was right in the middle of the where I wanted to be at the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville. And so I played around town and met Doug, and I guess when we were in college together as undergraduates, I was playing gigs and I played guitar too. And then I did go to MIT, and I could never write a song. But about the 4th year in graduate school at MIT, I was able to write a song. And the only song I could have ever wrote, "This Is Okay," it was called the Cowboy Song. And then I got to thinking, Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings and those guys at that time were growing out their hair, and really, what happened to the white-hatted heroes? There was an outlaw image that came along. And Doug was, we were playing other gigs together, but he was wearing a big cowboy hat, playing around town. And I liked it, and I could actually write cowboy music. I could write cowboy lyrics. I never could. I tried and tried and tried for years to write anything. I couldn't do it until I wrote a cowboy song. And so I got into it just because hunger. I wanted to make a living playing music, and I wanted to like the cowboy white-hatted heroes. And that's
also with Kenny, though.
Yeah, I hopped around a little bit, just like you, but yeah, finally landed with him and Slim, and so things just took off from there, and they haven't quit yet. But Ranger Doug says, there are 4 stages to a band's career. First stage is who are Riders in the Sky. The next stage is get me Riders in the Sky. The next stage is get me a young Riders in the Sky. And the fourth stage is who are Riders in the Sky. So we're kind of in the fourth stage now. I've been there for a while.
Oh, no.
Not here.
Been there for a while.
I'm taking my hat back after
There you go. But that's how I got into it, and I'm still here. I don't imagine I'm going anywhere.
Well, we hope not. Doug, I'm curious, in those early days when you and Slim were first kind of getting together, playing some of this music, and maybe that first gig, I'm curious what that was like. But was there a time when things just kind of clicked that, hey, we might have something here, and this might actually be a career we could take and play this old Western music?
Well, I'd say it was that first night at a little dump called Herr Harry's Frankenstein's in a basement sort of listening room bar in Nashville. And we all thought we were pretty funny. Turns out only one of us is funny, but we were just goofing and laughing and saying silly stuff between songs, and we were doing songs like Tumbling Tumbleweeds and Cool Water and Back in the Saddle Again and all the classic Western stuff. And 2 days later, Slim called me up and said, I'm still laughing from the other night. We need to do this more. We could do this. This could last a long time. And I said, yeah, let's go. So we were all doing other things at the time and playing music part-time. And about August of '78, we played 10 days at the Kentucky State Fair for $2,500. And we had to buy our own hotel rooms. But that was really when we really got on the road, and there was a professional start to what's lasted 40 years now.
Wow, that's amazing. A question I love to ask all of my guests on my podcast that are performers, and I think y'all will probably have some great answers, but after 40 years on the road, I'd love to hear of maybe the worst gig, or at least 2 or 3 stories that come to mind. Anyone who plays music in front of a live audience faces some pretty challenging situations, but I would think especially being a 4-piece cowboy band, maybe even more so.
Well, the one that comes to my mind is they had a big thing called the US Festival in Southern California, and it was all the huge country stars of the day, and we were scheduled to go on at like 4 in the afternoon or something, one of the warm-up groups, and our plane got delayed, and our plane got delayed, and plane got delayed. So we finally get there, and the only spot they have for us is between Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson. So we get up there, and everybody's waiting for Willie, and they start throwing things at us.
50,000 people.
50,000 people out there, yeah, all waiting for Willie Nelson. Here we are. We were raw meat up there. So that's one of the shorter sets we've ever played.
There was also the great tattoo convention, wasn't there?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wake up, Woody. Wake up, Woody.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
It's a tattoo convention.
Yeah.
What was that, in Bangor, or was that in
Bangor,
Portland?
Maine, yeah.
Snow was about as deep as this building, and it was all motorcycle riders, and their rigs were all covered up with snow, and there were literally hundreds of them in there, and we played in a little bar in there, and nobody came to maybe one person came in the gig, but the halls were full of guys tattooed, fresh tattoos going on, in their underwear, literally in their jocks, just tables full of people laying on them with guys doing tattoos. That was a fantastic. There were strange smells in the hall too.
One thing that's really fun about a career like this is you're not playing the same kind of place every night. There's so many different things, and that's really been one of the most fun parts of it. Should we take a moment to be serious and mention why Mark is with us? This is the great Mark Abbott, who's played with Ray Price and the Sons of the Pioneers for 12 years, and he's the premier bass player in Western music. And he's here in Two Slim's place because Slim's wife, Roberta, lost her battle with cancer last week. And so Slim's staying home with his family and his memories. And we're very lucky to have this wonderful musician and great guy joining us this week. Give Mark a hand.
Well, we all offer our condolences to Slim and to the band. I know you guys are a big family. But to kind of, maybe thinking of Slim, what was Slim doing before Riders in the Sky came together?
He was galvanizing. He was working in a galvanizing plant, and it was so hot and hard work. He was down to about 128 pounds. And there's a very well-known guy in Nashville who at Tennessee State University called Ed Too Tall Jones. And he went on to play with Dallas, I think, as professionally. But he had a little ad on TV, and hi, I'm Ed Too Tall Jones. He was about 6'6". So Slim said, well, if he's too tall, I'm too slim.
Too Slim likes to say now, he said, I used to be too slim, but now I'm just right.
He actually has a master's in wildlife management, and he's the only one still currently using his degree. He was actually married to Miss Roberta and Elko here back in...
this is their anniversary.
27 years ago.
Yeah.
At Brenda's wedding chapel.
Brenda's wedding.
And Slim, for you people who are our age, how many remember the Beatles? Anybody here? Everybody, right? Someday you're going to say that and no one's going to raise their hand. I hate to see that day. But Too Slim is the guy that heard on a radio show about Paul McCartney being dead. So Slim was working as a journalist for the paper, and he decided he'd write a funny little piece. So he took the album cover and he found all these things that he made up that proved that Paul was dead. The license plate on the Volkswagen, who was the grave digger, who was the whatever. And he printed that, and it went viral. It went all over the United States and went through Europe, too. Slim's the guy who promoted that and came up with that story. And wasn't he on TV with F. Lee Bailey?
He was.
Yeah. True story. Yeah. I'm sure Paul didn't like that at one bit.
Sold a lot of records.
Sold a lot of records.
Did you play that album backwards? Didn't it say something?
And it says, too slim, too slim.
We'd only planned on a couple of tunes, but could I put you on the spot, maybe play another tune before we do another round of
Why, sure.
questions?
What do you like?
Like Press Along?
Press along to the big corral? Sure. We'll give Mark a chance to sing, too.
I think I'll just stay seated.
You just stay seated. I'm going to stand up.
I'm going to stand. If Woody's going to stand, I'll stand.
3, 4. That ugly brute from the cattle chute.
Press along to the big corral.
He should be branded on his snoot.
Press along to the big corral.
Press along.
Press along, cowboy. Press along with the cowboy yell.
Press along.
Press along with a loud big noise. Press along to the big corral. Oh, the chuck we get ain't fit to eat. Press along to the big corral. There's rocks in the beans and sand in the meat. Press along to the big corral.
Press along.
Press along, cowboy. Press along with a cowboy yell.
Press along.
Press along with a loud big noise. Press along to the big corral.
Well, early in the morning, about 4:30,
Press along to the big corral.
you can hear him open his face and roar.
Press along to the big corral.
Press along.
Press along, cowboy. Press along with a cowboy yell.
Press along.
Press along with a loud big noise. Press along to the big corral. Press along, cowboy. Press along with a cowboy yell.
Press along.
Press along with a loud big noise. Press along to the big corral.
Oh, that's just terrific, guys. Great old Western song.
Yeah.
Doug, I know you, before you were part of the band, you worked for a time as an archivist at the Country Music Hall of Fame.
I did.
And even today, I mean, you're thought of as one of the premier scholars of this music. I'd like to hear you talk about that and how that's influenced the band, the formation of the band and the work that y'all do, keeping these old songs alive and playing, not just the old chestnuts, but, really digging deep into this music and
Yeah.
playing some obscure things.
Yeah, well, let's see. I worked for about 4.5 years at the Country Music Foundation, and part of my job there was to do an oral history project. So they sent me all over the country interviewing aging country music entertainers, and fortunately enough for me, when they sent me out west, I got to spend a lot of time with Ray Whitley and Jimmy Wakely and Eddie Dean and Johnny Bond especially took me around to every place. These are wonderful guys who are the guys who really created our style of music, and I got to do long interviews with them, and the more I talked to them, the more passionate I got about Western music and sort of rediscovered it. And one of the places they sent me, I think it was 1974, the first and last Western Swing Festival that Guy Logsdon put on. And there's all the old Texas Playboys were there. And it was just fantastic, but it was nothing but dance music and feeling sorry for yourself and broken hearts and beer drinking all day. And I love that. I play in a Western swing band too, as many of you may know, the Time Jumpers, but I love that music very much. But for some reason, he booked the Sons of the Pioneers, who aren't a swing band, of course. And they got out there and they sang, first thing, Timber Trail and Way Out There and all these songs about the outdoors. And man, I just fell in love with it all over again. It was like I remembered it from those days of hearing the Wagon Masters at Knott's Berry Farm. So then I got all eat up with that. And I'm the kind of guy that if I'm curious about something, I get really curious about it. So, if we had a lot of transcriptions, the big 16-inch transcriptions at the Hall of Fame, and Bob Pinson would bring out some songs. We'd listen to, like 15 or 20 minutes every day. And we called it our old-time disc of the day, and it would either be Bob Wills or Foy Willing and the Riders of the Purple Sage. And I go, well, who are the Riders of the Purple Sage? Who's, and that's Johnny Paul. Well, what's his story? And Al Slowey, what's his story? And the Pioneers, well, gosh, Ken Curtis was in the Pioneers, and what's his story? I just that's the kind of person I am. I guess just so curious about it, and I love the songs, and I love the music progression. I mean, I don't know how to put it, but being a guy who loves literature and poetry and stuff, I love Bob Nolan's writing and Tim Spencer's writing, but I also love the way the chords went. And, as a guitar player, I just really got into the progressions and changes and such, and grew to love Western music more every day. And like I said, I was playing it before very long as a solo. And then we put together the Riders, and all that stuff I was hearing in my head, suddenly, there it was, with these incredibly talented guys I work with.
Riders in the Sky first performed in Elko at the Cowboy Poetry Gathering the second year of the gathering in 1986. The Cowboy Poetry Gathering has always been focused on telling the authentic stories of the working West, and yet Riders in the Sky are focused more on the music that grew out of a mythological view of the American West. The following quote by Wally McCrae explains why Riders in the Sky have been such an important presence at the Cowboy Poetry Gathering all of these years. This quote is from Wally's keynote address at the 10th anniversary of the gathering. Wally was talking about highlights from the first 10 years of the gathering and said, I remember hearing about the riders in the sky. I knew that they made fun of something that I held very dear and almost holy. And I saw Woody Paul out here in the milling and balling pen with his dippy hog trough hat on, and I knew I was going to hate those guys. I was wrong. I love them because I knew that we need to laugh at ourselves, and the riders taught us that.
But our mission always was to have fun with the music, but never to make fun of the music, never.
Yep. We sort of have a secret mission all along, really, is just to introduce this to a whole new generation as we go. And now we're seeing people come to the show, you know, great big guy and 4 or 5 little kids, and I got on stage with you in Elko in 1982, you know, or whatever. And I wanted my kids to see it. And so, you know, we're really very much focused on keeping this alive and vibrant, you know.
I must say one thing about the music, too, because the kind of music that the Silver Screen Cowboy bands played is deceptively simple. They think it's simple. I know we would get great guitar players to play on some of our records in Nashville, and when they came right down to it and had to play the songs we were playing, they were amazed at the way that it was composed chordally. It was something, not just 3 or 4 chords, and that's because our kind of music is an amalgamation of Dixieland and swing music, European music, and Tin Pan Alley music, all rolled into one. If you listen to the great songs that Bob Nolan and Tim Spencer wrote, you'll hear these great chords, and I think that's what drew, I know, me, and Ranger Doug said himself, and Woody, I'm sure, and Slim too, into this music, because it's not as easy as it may seem when we're playing it. There's lots of things going on musically, and I think it's, as I say, it seems simple, but that's very deceptive.
How about another song, and then I'll read some questions to y'all from
Yeah,
social
you got
media.
a bunch of questions
Yeah.
online, didn't you?
Hey, Ranger Doug, why don't you do the song that you did, the first song in 1977, when you and Slim and Windy Bill and who else got together? Was that it?
Uh-huh.
The first song, Back in the Saddle? Yeah.
I'm back in the saddle again, out where a friend is a friend, where the longhorn cattle feed on the lowly Jimson Beach. Back in the saddle again, I'm riding the range once more. I'm toting my old 44, where you sleep out every night and the only law is right. Back in the saddle again. Whoopee-tie-yi-yo, rocking to and fro. Back in the saddle again. Whoopee-tie-yi-yay, I go my way. Back in the saddle again. King of the cowboy fiddlers.
Thank you.
You know what? That is really a high note.
It's so high.
So high.
Not logical for a man to sing
No,
it
it's
high.
not. No.
Well, you're right, Woody, but if this was a logical world, men would ride side saddle. Think about it.
So in preparation for this, I took to social media and asked my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram followers if they had questions they would like me to ask the writers. So I might read through a few of those if y'all are up for that.
Sure.
So here's one from a fellow named Jay Peterson. He says, after singing the same songs,
We
y'all
know
must
him.
know Jay.
Oh, yeah.
After singing the same songs night after night for 40 years, how do you still put your heart into them? Rearranging, changing harmonies, hypnosis?
All of the above.
Well, like Joey said, you know, it's every song's different every night. I experiment with different chords, or not chords as much as formations. What do you call them? You know, just the way you play them. Voicing, yeah. Experiment with that. Woody's, you know, every solo he does is different every night. Joey, the same thing. The fills and the background. I mean, you're paying attention to all of that, as well as the shape of your voice as it comes out, and trying to sing in tune, which we haven't mastered yet, but
Wait a
we're
minute.
working on it.
Plus, we feed off the audience. That's
Sure.
a big part of it. You know, we've tried it with no audience, and it doesn't work very well. For
Right.
us.
It's people come up after the show, you know, they say, "Oh, my face hurts from laughing," and when you bring that kind of joy to people, it just keeps it fresh. It's still fresh. I had as much fun singing Back in the Saddle just now as I did November 11th, 1977.
You know, I'll tell you what does it for me. Seriously, it's rare in a musician's career, a long career, that you can be on stage with four guys who just gel together. You know, I mean, I enjoy it. Not even sometimes even listening to the individual thing, but just as the whole, as we sound as a band, and it's just so fun because that doesn't happen often. You know, we've played places that the week before they had some great rock and roll band, whoever, just for example, this might not be the one, but Blue Oyster Cult or somebody like that, and the guys don't even talk to each other today. They have to come in separate airplanes, they stay in separate hotels, they hit the stage and they sing together, they get off stage, don't even look at each other and say, "How are you?" And I would quit tomorrow, and that's not how we are. On stage we hear this wonderful blend, and it's not even that I'm listening to Riders in the Sky, I'm just listening to this sound that I grew up with, and that's what's so important.
Yeah, it's we really are a family, and that's why, you know, in a way we're hurting a lot because Roberta was just like one of us. She was one of us.
Our sister.
Yeah.
I would think, too, your repertoire is so deep. You know, playing a 2-hour concert, you're not going to blow through every song you know. Do y'all try to change that up and rotate through this wealth of material you've accumulated over the 40 years?
We do. We have sort of a formula for how it should go, you know, and when each of us has a solo, or where you do a slow song, where you do an instrumental. And so when it's my turn to do a slow song, I can do, you know, anything. Lonely Yukon Stars, or Blue Montana Skies, or Molly Darlin', anything I feel like singing. Then go to Woody, and he'll sing anything he wants to, and instrumentally the same way.
Or be in support of our latest album, too.
Yeah, we always play stuff from the newest album, and we play usually an inspirational song every set from the inspirational album we did, and you know, what can I say?
So here's a question from Sharon O'Toole. She says, "How do you keep your hats so clean?"
we're the good guys. There's no doubt about it. White hats, good guys.
They just don't get dirty. I mean, Roy Rogers would have a fist fight, and his hat was still on, and it was still clean. You know, it's just when you become cowboy heroes, that's what happens.
Look at Gene Autry and his 45-shot revolver. I mean,
Yeah.
you couldn't do that.
We wake up in the morning and our clothes are all pressed and our teeth are brushed. You know, I mean, just
Excellent.
That's the cowboy way.
Here's one from Liz Cook, my cousin. She says, how did you come up with the name Riders in the Sky? I'd like to hear that story myself.
Well, yeah, we played. First guy that played with us was Windy Bill Collins. Woody joined us just after a couple of months, but Windy Bill and Slim and I, we were looking around for a name. You know, Windy Bill, Doug, and Slim, not much of a band name. So we were thinking and thinking. He went into Tower Records and he was leafing through the records and the Western section looking for inspiration, and Sons of the Pioneers had just come out with a big double album with a beautiful faux leather tooling and picture of the guys in their classic era of Bob and Tim and Lloyd Perryman, and the title of the album was all cowboy classic songs. The title of the album was Riders in the Sky, one of the songs on there. Light bulb went off in his head, and he called me up and said, "How about Riders in the Sky for a name?" And I said, "Yeah." It says Western, and it's memorable, and so we did it. And Stan Jones, who wrote the song, Stan Jones' son, talked to me one time a long time ago. He said he was so glad we did that, picked that name, because it keeps his dad's song alive.
Well, there's a lot of questions kind of around the idea of this, being your 40th anniversary as a band and looking ahead, if there's an end in sight or plans to scale back, or what's in the future for Riders in the Sky?
Well, in 2008, we were so busy and away so much, we said, we're just going to have to scale back a little. And told our agent, not to book so many dates for the next year. And then the recession hit, and he didn't have to do that. That took care of itself. But we still probably do, 80 to 100 road dates a year, and we play the Grand Ole Opry on the weekends. We're not on the road, and we're all still healthy. I know we're a bunch of old geezers, but we don't feel like it. We as long as we're all healthy, we love this, and we want to continue.
Well, that's great. Thank you guys so much for being here to answer these questions and tell stories, and thank you for 40 years of wonderful music and fun you've given us all. Would you play a tune for us to wrap this up?
Thank you, Andy. And I might mention that Ranger Doug's books are available in the Folk Life Center bookstore.
So you got your commercial after all.
That's right.
Happy trails to you
Everybody sing with us, come on.
until we meet again.
I was just kidding.
Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then.
Who cares about the clouds when we're together?
Just sing a song and bring the sunny weather. And happy trails to you till we meet again.
Yeah! Let's ride, boys! Yeah!
Move 'em out.
Yeah! Wait for me, Ranger Doug!
right, folks, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Riders in the Sky for taking the time to visit with me. You can find out more about the Riders at ridersinthesky.com. I'd like to thank the Western Folklife Center for making it possible to do a live taping of Cowboy Crossroads at the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering. You can find out more about the Western Folklife Center at westernfolklife.org. You can find out more about me and this show at andyhedges.com. If you're enjoying this show and would like to help me keep it going, you can leave a donation on the website, or you could leave a rating and a review on the iTunes store, and take the time to tell a friend about the show. If you'd like to contact me with a question or a comment or a story, I'd love to hear from you. Send an email to andy@andyhedges.com. Thank you for listening to Cowboy Crossroads.